Wonderful. Thanks, Terry. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me to speak here today, and to everyone at the Catchment Network for today's event. Thank you also to Wally for welcoming us to beautiful Ngunnawal country this morning. By way of brief introduction, I'm Hannah. I'm a final year climate science and law student at the ANU. I worked in politics for several years. I'm an avid long-distance trail runner. Today, I wanted to speak about two antidotes to climate anxiety as I see them: community climate action and connection with nature. Wonderful. Before I get to those, I wanted to share a little bit about where this all started for me. Like maybe some of you, my passion for conserving our climate and environment began early on. I remember going camping with my dad on scout trips in primary school, finding so much joy in climbing up a peak and being immersed in the sights and sounds of the bush around us. I remember looking up at the great tendrils of the Milky Way and spotting the nebula nestled within the Orion constellation, feeling both very small and very lucky to be a part of this world. As I got older, that love of nature became tangled with a growing awareness of climate change and the inertia that seemed to characterise so many debates about climate action. In response, I joined local groups advocating for climate justice, speaking out against projects like the Middle Arm gas hub, planned for just 5 kilometres outside of Darwin. In August 2023, I spoke at a rally against the project outside Parliament House. That was how I met Anjali Sharma, and how I became involved in the campaign for a legislative duty of care on climate. This is also where the first antidote, community climate action, comes in. Some of you might remember, back in 2020, Anjali Sharma and 7 other young people took the then Environment Minister, Susan Ley, to court. They argued that the minister had a duty of care to young Australians and future generations to consider the climate impacts of fossil fuel projects during the approval process. The court initially found that such a duty did exist, but 6 months later, that decision was overturned on appeal, with the court effectively shifting the onus onto Parliament to legislate such a duty of care. Fast forward to August 2023, and the Duty of Care Bill was introduced by ACT Independent Senator David Pocock. The bill would have meant that for the first time, a decision maker could reject a fossil fuel project based on its likely climate impacts on young people and generations to come. When the Senate held an inquiry into the bill, we ran workshops across the country to support local communities to write submissions to Parliament. What struck me most was the diversity of people who took part in this process. We had a yoga studio in the outer suburbs of Adelaide run a submissions writing night. We received a submission supporting the Duty of Care Bill from a miner who had worked in the Queensland coal industry for 43 years, calling now for a just transition for him and his colleagues. As you can see on the slide, primary school students across the country sent in their submissions, which is both gorgeous and frightening to see, because you could see just how clearly these kids understood the future that they would have to build their lives within. There were also submissions from people who wanted to be parents, but felt too afraid of the future they were leaving behind to even consider it. These submissions were hard to read, but they also highlighted something powerful. Across families, classrooms, communities, churches, workplaces, people were finding ways to make their voices heard on an issue that will define the world that we are leaving behind. Throughout this campaign, we've engaged hundreds of young people in the political process, elevating their voices, concerns, and lived experiences to decision makers. A few years back, we brought 25 young people from across the country to federal parliament to meet with more than 40 federal MPs about the bill. We sure got some odd looks from advisors and politicians as teenagers and primary school students with backpacks bigger than their bodies rushed around Parliament House trying to find the location of the next MP's office. But I'm not here to tell you that it's all easy or that people power alone is enough in the face of the compounding crises that we're facing. Unfortunately, the Duty of Care Bill was voted down in the Senate late last year, which was a massive blow after years of campaigning. And more broadly, we know that the vital signs of our global life support system are all heading in the wrong direction. Often, the small wins we do achieve don't feel like nearly enough against the scale of the threats we face or the glacial pace of the action that we need to meet them. But this cannot mean that we let despair, apathy, anxiety take hold. We all have a responsibility to show up in our own ways in our own communities and work together to foster stewardship for the environments and ecosystems that sustain us. And this brings me to the second antidote, connection to nature. To me, it makes perfect sense that we need nature to thrive. Humans have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years on timescales shaped by the natural world. It is only very recently that we have fallen so dramatically out of step with these rhythms, disrupting the flow of the rivers that sustain us, clearing the ecosystems that support us, and destabilising the weather systems that bring rain to the driest inhabited continent on Earth. So, of course, seeing all of this unfold in front of us, anxiety feels like a completely normal response. But climate anxiety is not just about personal fear. For many people, it comes from understanding the global impacts on global scales, on vulnerable communities we may never meet, on future generations we will never know, on ecosystems we may never see but still feel connected to. So relieving climate anxiety cannot just be individual. It cannot just be about reducing your own footprint or preparing your own home for a hotter future. These things matter, but they are not enough on their own. The deeper antidote to me lies in collective action, as I touched on before, working together to push governments, institutions and powerful interests towards decisions that are consistent with a safe and livable future. Connection with nature also sustains this work. It boosts well-being and improves mental health, as Jackie outlined. It helps people feel joy in the moment, watching gangs frolic in the sunshine or observing the last glimmers of orange rays fall over the mountains. But it also does something richer. It reminds us of what we are fighting for. It inspires a sense of purpose, and it helps turn anxiety into care and care into action. This feels especially relevant here in a forum focused on caring for the Upper Murrumbidgee, because connection with nature is not abstract. It is grounded in particular rivers, in creeks, in wetlands, hills and grasslands. It is grounded in the work of people who know a place well enough to notice when it is changing and who care enough about it to respond. So I would encourage everyone here today to make the most of the nature that we have on our doorstep, whether in the Cotter, in the hills of the Namagee, or in the plains of a rural valley. You don't have to be the fittest or the most adventurous person, but we know that getting out into nature is one of the best ways to alleviate the heaviness that comes with the tireless work that you all do. And what is even more powerful is building community around that connection. You can encourage people in your walking groups, friendships, workplaces, school fetes and Saturday morning footy to get outside, connect with the places around them and get their hands dirty. This is why the work of organisations like the UMCN, like Landcare and local park care groups is so critical. It helps restore the places that we care about one bit at a time, and it can help restore us too. So in the face of climate anxiety, I do not think the answer is to look away. I think the answer instead is to look more closely at the places we love, the communities we belong to, and the responsibilities that we all share. Community action reminds us that we are not powerless, and connection with nature reminds us why this work matters. And together, they help us keep showing up. Thank you so much.